interesting. To discuss, let's bring in Joel Rubin. He's a former senior State Department official who has a new piece out in Axios titled, "With Withdrawal Walk Back, Bolton Scrambles Trump's Syria Policy." Joel, what happened today in Turkey? Would you call that a scramble or something else?
Well, it's certainly like a broken egg, more than a scrambled egg, and it is troubling. Thank you. It's troubling. The president right now doesn't have a coherent policy, and his national security advisor is representing him overseas and essentially getting the door slammed in his face by a foreign leader that we need to have on our side if we're going to get out of Syria effectively. So this policy is stuck right now, and the president needs to get his team on board, on the same page, and he needs to lay out a clear strategy for how he's going to execute it.
Is the president and his team on the same page?
Well, we hear a lot of rumblings, and certainly Secretary of State Pompeo does not seem to be saying the same things that John Bolton says. He does sound a little bit more like President Trump from 2 weeks ago, but we don't have a defense secretary right now either. This is, we have to remember, what caused General or then Secretary of Defense Mattis to quit. The idea that the U.S. would just leave Syria with unfinished business. So there's a lot of chaos playing out in public. Typically, these kinds of debates between agencies and amongst senior advisors would get hashed out behind the scenes in the White House, and they would come to terms with each other, and then there would be a policy. It seems like this is being executed in reverse, and that's very troubling.
If the president and his team are not on the same page, why would any leader of an allied country meet with the president's team?
Well, that is what we're seeing. The net result is when we have a confusion and incoherence like we do, our allies begin to doubt us. They don't trust us. They see no real value in listening to us. And our adversaries don't worry about us because they, frankly, don't fear an American statement of aggressiveness. In the case of Iran, the president has said that he has a strong policy on Iran. He's enacting sanctions. And then about a week or so ago, he said that Iran could do what it wants in Syria. So why should Iran worry about American resolve and American policy when that's the way it's communicated? So it is very hard when our word is not consistent and strong.
But here's the thing. The president, until recently, has been pretty consistent, at least during his campaign or early on, that he wanted the U.S. out of Syria. And the mission in Syria is just to defeat ISIS. So what do? How do you get the U.S. out, complete that mission without angering all these allies?
The first thing that we have to remember, and you just hinted at it, is that right now the president, he communicated that he wanted to leave Syria. And frankly, if he did it tomorrow, there would be complaints, but Congress would not vote to force him to stay in. There's not a lot of political support for staying in Syria, but there are risks with leaving related to Iran, ISIS, Israeli security. Those issues need to be hammered out behind the scenes, and then the U.S. needs to engage those countries in how to resolve it. The problem that we have is that the president wants to get out. He's pushing the envelope, but he doesn't have a plan for how to get out, and it's creating chaos. But we do have to remember, the American people are not actively supporting American engagement in Syria. There's not been a lot of political support for anything. Even President Obama, he didn't have the votes to launch strikes against Syria's chemical facilities 5 years ago. He knew that then, and President Trump, he couldn't get authorization from this Congress for a Syrian war if he wanted to. So there's a lot of dynamics, but the U.S. does need to have a policy. And right now we don't have a policy. We just have a lot of incoherence.
You talk about Obama really quickly. Obama gave this Cairo speech laying out his strategy for the Middle East. Pompeo is going to be giving his own Cairo speech. What should we expect?
It's being framed right now as the anti-Obama speech, a counter-narrative, and it's going to focus on Iran and its behavior in the region. I think we're going to hear a lot less about human rights and democracy and a lot more about interests and a lot more about countering terrorism and Iran. And it's going to be a speech given in Cairo, which we have to remember when President Obama spoke there, Hosni Mubarak was running the country, and now it's President Sisi. And so as much as things have changed in many ways, they're still the same.
All right, Joel Rubin, the story isn't over. I'm sure we're going to have you back on soon to talk about it. And staying in the region.